Hello, Alex, and welcome to the FluentReads growth series. How are you doing today?
Hi there, Mark. I'm doing really well. I hope same goes for you.
Yes, I'm doing very well, thanks. Okay, so this is the
Awesome.
FluentReads growth series where we're talking about different soft skills with different professionals for them to give their unique perspective on these different soft skills that you chose to talk about today. So before we get started, let's talk a little bit about your how would you like to introduce yourself to the FluentReads community?
Well, let's just keep it pretty simple, I guess. So basically, I'm from Belgium originally, and then about 1.5 year ago, I moved to Mauritius with my fiance, where we live happily and we really enjoy the island life. Um, and for the rest, well, I have worked in sales in tech. Then I moved into more email marketing and everything, which led me to now being a content writer where I help. Well, I'm a huge remote advocate. And so today I help remote advocates and freelancers working in remote to get more leads, to get more reach, to get more, to become top of mind, the go-to expert in their industry. Through LinkedIn, through their LinkedIn strategy. So I help them create this. And then I also have my own newsletter called Destination Remote, in which I share a short description of a person I met in every country in the world. So I'm on a goal to meet one person working remotely in every country in the world. And I'm telling a bit of their story, how they got there and everything. So yeah, that's basically what I'm doing today. My short background, and I hope it's enough.
Okay, that sounds exciting. Okay, so tell us a
It
little bit
is.
about your tell us a little bit about your English language learning journey. Your English learning journey.
Yes, of course. So basically, well, Belgium is a very complicated country. There's the northern part where we speak Dutch, Flemish, and the southern part where we speak French. And I used to live in the northern part, so where we speak Flemish. And we have one particularity compared to the southern part is that um, TV has always been in original version, subtitled. So since we were very young, we listened and we watched TV in English, and we got the subtitles. So this is something that I thought was very good from a young age to get to get in touch with English. And then at the age of, I think it's 13, we get English classes in school as well. The level was pretty good actually, so I was really happy about that. And then after high school, I went for a gap year to the United States also, San Francisco, Boston. So that obviously also really helps into speaking, well, to get better at English and get more familiar to speaking with native English speakers. And then when I went to university, the first 3 years were in French with some English classes, and the master degree was completely in English. So, well, a lot of English there as well. And then in my jobs, I have been confronted a lot in English, and now I prefer actually to write and talk in English. Well, especially write because it's not the most difficult language to write, especially compared to French, where it's a very difficult. Well, there's a lot of complications and everything. So yeah, that's basically my background and where I got my current level from. Whether it's good or not, it's I think it's pretty okay. But so that's how I got to speak English and how I speak English now.
Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing that, and you have a great level.
Thank
we're gonna
you.
go into the for our growth series. We're gonna be talking about soft skills. So first, as an introduction, why do you think soft skills that we're going to be exploring? Why do you think they're important in general, or how would you define them?
Well, I think the definition is pretty simple yet complex. For me, soft skills is kind of everything that is related to your personality, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn them. That's the difference with hard skills, where well, hard skills is obviously where you can really like learn some techniques or some tools, but where soft skills are easier for some people than for others, really well based on their personality. But I think they are really important in well professionally, but also in our private lives, because they kind of they are decisive on how you or they guide you on your relationships, how you react, how you respond, how you are able to get things done or get things done from by others. So I think it's super crucial, and well, especially today where there's some very important. Well, there's some soft skills that get more important with the whole remote work and everything is changing so fast, and the world is going crazy. So it's really important to have some basic soft skills to adapt. I guess we're going to talk about adaptability as well, but like this is, for example, a good one to show that yeah, you gotta stay up to date and adapt, go with the flow to make sure you can stay successful, productive, and whatever it is.
Okay. All right, perfect. So yes, we're gonna start with our soft skills for the growth series. So basically, we're gonna start with the soft skill, and you're going to, simply, talk about what you think the soft skill is, and then you're gonna share examples, stories, anecdotes, from your own personal experience or
Mm-hmm.
from others. As you said, you have the experience with working with different people from all over the world. So, uh, I guess we're looking forward to some interesting stories or anecdotes from others as well. Okay.
I hope I will be able to provide with some cool stories that people can relate to.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So we're gonna start with adaptability.
Yeah, so well, adaptability is one of my favorites, I would say, because it seems easy and we do it every day, but sometimes it's pretty hard. Um, I mean, well, a good example of adaptability is that my let's take my grandmother. She plays bridge. It's a card game. She used to play it with her friends, and now she plays it online on a tablet, and she's like almost 90 years old. So this is a very good well example of being adaptable, because like her friends were getting older and they couldn't get to her house. So she decided, instead of complicating her friends' lives, why don't they play online, and then they do it, they only see each other, for example, once or twice a week instead of every day. So this is like a very good example for people whom we consider as less adaptable, because well, technology is not something they were born in. So this is something that proves that being adaptable is really good. But then there's a lot of, well, hundreds of examples in the tools we use in our daily work, the apps, social media. I mean, today it's TikTok. 2 years ago it was Instagram. Before it was Facebook. And people evolve, they adapt. um, and it goes kind of automatically. But then for some other stuff, more professional stuff, it's sometimes harder. um, but yeah, that's what I would say about adaptability.
Okay. Adaptability, for example, in remote work, do you see? Can you give any examples related to this?
Yeah, that's something that is actually very, very good. Well, it's something that I like to talk about, because it's something that a lot of people have a difficult time with, is to disconnect from work. For example, the adaptability is that before, when people worked more in office, at the end of the day, most of us, of course, there's some exceptions, but just clapped our computer, went home, and work was done. But now in remote work, it's really difficult to sometimes like get set boundaries and say, okay, now I'm closing my computer and the day is done. No, because you're still in the kind of environment, so you have to adapt and fix like new objectives or new rules for set new rules for yourself. Say, hey, okay, now after 6, after 7, there's no more work. I disconnect my notifications. I put my professional phone away. It can be, well, there's a lot of tips and tricks, but this is something that's for a lot of people really difficult to adapt. But it makes some people really more successful, because otherwise you can get overworked very fast, um, which leads to stress, which leads to well, less productivity. And so those who can adapt quickly and find a new way that works for them, those are the ones who will feel better mentally, physically. So that's one very good example, and that's something that I had, for example, a difficult time with in the beginning, and now I'm actually getting better at it every day, setting these boundaries, finding some tips and tricks to put work aside, put the phone away, or stuff like that, to really be more productive the next day or at some other moments.
Okay, great. Let's move on to the next one. Career trends.
Career trends, yeah, that's something that's something I can talk about as well, because I have well, I have changed a few times jobs, and I mean, things evolve, obviously, as everything is, well, the whole technology and jobs, and we now with the whole AI, we see people getting afraid. Whoa, there's gonna be millions of jobs that will get lost. But then on the other hand, there's a lot of new jobs that are being created. And so on these career trends, I think it's something also that is really evolving, also related to adaptability, to evolve, keep learning, and kind of see where there are opportunities, learn new soft skills, to be able to get a good career development, or to be able to, well, surf the wave at the right moment, and get to the right skills at the right moment to be able to, well, to get the good careers. And it's something that's not always easy, especially when we already have a job, because we're pretty like focused on what we are doing. But I think it's really good to always keep like a wider view on everything that's going on around you, and use everything that you see to benefit from it, basically.
Okay, great. Our next one is communication skills.
Communication skills, that's something that is also very important, because, well, I mean, for me, not only in our professional lives but also in our well, private life, I think people who communicate better often succeed better in life, at least professionally, um, because they just have this feeling of how to communicate stuff, how to get people do things for or with them. So I think communication is really important. And then there's like the verbal communication and written communication. And written communication is something that is getting super important in our daily work environment, in the current work environment, because, well, with the whole remote or even hybrid settings, well, there's a lot of people who actually start sending emails, or there's Slack, there's Zoom, whatever. And so people really need to get better at communicating, be like concise, be clear about what they're saying, going kind of straight to the point, keeping it short, to make sure that the message comes along well, and is understood the way you want it to be understood by the person you're sending it to. So this is something very important. And again, this is something that I've seen in remote work, that a lot of people in the beginning, and I was a really good example of this. I had a really hard time going straight to the point when I was writing. And so the people that was getting my message, they got confused all the time. They were like, huh, so are you asking for this or for that? And then sometimes you just have to be like, okay, this is what I'm asking. Here is the context. Can you give me an answer A or B, or give me a specific time slot, or give me something, and just like keep one call to action or one question per message you send, so the person doesn't get confused, and so that you don't get these. You probably had it already, but like these um, communication where you respond to one thing and then in the meanwhile the other person already sent something, and then you have kind of two conversations overlapping where you're not like having one straight chronological message. And this is complicating a lot of stuff because people get like, okay, what what do I focus on now? So just keep one sentence, one message at a time, and this is already something that helps me. This is something that I try to do. Keep it clear, concise, and one message every time, and this will already help a lot. And it's not only in written; it's also in verbal communication. Keep it simple.
Okay, great, great, great. And I think that's useful advice, short and concise, and exactly to try to get to the point. Okay. The next one is emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. Yeah, that's also this is something that is kind of related to communication for me, because when you're communicating, you can express yourself, but you also have to understand what the person, or be able to to put yourself into the shoes of the person who you're talking with, or that you're managing, or it can be anything in life. And for this, I have a very good example where in one of my former jobs, at some moments I was performing a bit, well, a bit less than I used to, and my manager was, well, my N plus one was actually really good, because instead of saying, hey, your numbers are not good and everything, he had this really good emotional intelligence where he knew he had been through it himself. So he started explaining he had been through it himself, and he didn't say, okay, your numbers are not as good as before. This, he was more like, okay, I have had also a moment where my numbers were a bit down. um, for me it was related to this. What happened to you? Is it related to something that happened in your life? Is it a lack of motivation at the moment? And so he really was able to put himself in my shoes, or let me know that he understands that it's something that can happen. And it was way easier for me to discuss why it was, and we found a solution. And in 2 weeks everything was well, I was back on track. So I think this is something that's really important, not only professionally but also in our private lives, because putting yourself in the shoes of the other person, well, it's so important. And this is also where you can make a difference, not only in your life but also in other people's life. And that's something that for me is unique but not easy.
Okay, great, great. All right, our next one, hard work versus smart work.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Hard work versus smart work. I actually, I'm always a bit biased, because I think most people who succeed work hard and smart. Like the if you only work very hard or you only work very smart, you can succeed. But I think like the top performers, they're most of the times people who combine both. Um, and a simple example, for example, would be a a guy on LinkedIn actually that I follow. I don't know him personally, but he's a guy I follow, and he's a growth hacker. And basically, he's super good at what he does because he works quite a lot. He creates a lot of stuff, but he gets a way to automate a lot of stuff. Like he can code a little bit. He knows a lot of no code tools. He's very good at automation with Zapier and all this stuff. And so there's a lot of stuff that he's taking his time. Um, that he's freeing up his time to focus on other stuff. But on the same time, he's not doing it to work 4 hours a week. He's doing it to free up time, but then the time he frees up, he uses it to create new stuff and everything. So that's really cool. But on the other hand, I'm a bit biased because I think hard work is good, but for me personally, the people who really succeed is the people who don't overwork. It's good to work hard, but they don't overwork. They enjoy also what happens in life, moments with cherished family moments, with their kids, with their friends, but yet work smartly enough to make it happen. And that's a bit where there's a dangerous line in between both, like a gray zone where at what moment are you trespassing this gray zone and are you getting into the overworking. So hard work is good as long as you're not overworking, and smart work is always good because well, smart working is it's a way to win time, or to it can be make more money in less time or get more stuff done. um, can be different things.
Okay, great. All right, moving on. Innovation.
Innovation, also a good one. um, Innovation, I think this is also something that, well, totally has its place in this list of soft skills, because I think people who innovate or do things differently than others, they're often people I look up to because they have the guts to go for it. Um, they well they kind of like set the tone for all the other people who are followers in the end, and this is like 99% of the people, and most of the time I'm one of these followers. It's not a bad thing to be a follower because like there's obviously not 100 Elon Musks on this planet or 100 Bill Gates, but these are like the innovators who get this next level. But then on a simpler level, like there's a couple that I met on LinkedIn, for example, and they were really smart. It's not like they were really innovating something, but they were doing something that most people didn't do. They both wanted to travel the world and work, be a digital nomad, but they didn't. They had a hard time finding a remote job that was able to what they were able to get. And on the other hand, they were still pretty young, so they needed absolutely a job. And so instead of looking for a remote job, they just went to their employer. They kind of set a trial period to prove that they can work remotely and do it. And this is not something new, but it's something that very few people do. And their employer said yes. And now, like 1.5 year later, they're still employed in this company, and they're still working for this company, exploring the world. So it just means that sometimes you with small innovation. And again, it doesn't, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It can just be doing something that most people don't do. Just be a bit smart, and you'll see that you'll get a lot more than you think. So this is one very good example, I think, for innovation, where it's not someone innovating a product or anything, but it's more someone here. In this case, it's more innovating on the way of getting a remote job, which is not getting a new job, just asking your employer to be able to work remotely. And this is smart, and this is people I look up to, because they just, probably most of the people they asked for help said, okay, you can look into this job board and follow this tip and do this with your resume and ask these questions during the interview. But they didn't even go for all of this. They just said, like, okay, let's skip first of all the hard work and keep it simple in the first place. And it worked. So this is certainly something, like innovation is certainly something that is very smart. And then yeah, I think a very short, I'm not going to take too much time, but a very short other example is more on a personal level with the Destination Remote newsletter, where there were already a lot of newsletters about remote. And so I started to think, what can I do differently? And it was really hard. And then I saw one guy having 100 challenges across the world. And I was like, okay, let's combine a challenge with the remote newsletter. And then I said to myself, okay, what if I set the challenge to meet one remote worker in every country in the world? Um, and it was super cool, because like I think it's been 1 month now. Yeah, it's I'm going to publish my fifth edition. I have published four, so it's been around 1 month now, and I already have like over 750 people following the newsletter and everything, and people are really excited, and I have good open rates. People really want to read it. So sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but just add something new to make it spicy, or to make it interesting for people.
Okay, perfect. All right, very good. Let's moving on to motivating people.
Motivating people, well, that's a nice one, because again, it kind of goes along with communication and emotional intelligence. um, they're all kind of related to each other, because motivating people is also understanding what gets them motivated. Um, and again, I'm gonna take here an example of a couple that I've met. It's actually this week, um, that they are, no, next week they're getting published. The remote Destination Remote featuring is getting out next week. So basically, they were a couple, and every summer, since well, they live in Bulgaria. They live in Sofia, so the capital of Bulgaria, but they have a house near the beach on the coast side. And the husband, he worked remotely, has always been working remotely, and the mother was a journalist. She worked in the office. It was still kind of okay, you come every day to the office, you work in the office and everything. And at some point, they got kids, and then the husband left for summer holidays to the beach, and she couldn't take any holidays anymore that year, and so she felt really depressed. And then, you know, the she said, like, to herself, okay, I need a remote job, because I want to go spend those 2 months every summer with my kids on the beach side, and do it. So it took her a few years, but she did. Um, and she actually asked her company to work remotely, but it wasn't possible for them. It was not something they were doing. And so this is something in remotes that I see a lot, is that as leaders, you gotta understand the biggest motivators of every person, and it can be super different. Some are motivated by money, others are motivated by just getting people recognizing the hard work and the good work that they deliver, and telling them like, hey, thank you, showing gratitude, thank you, you're working well. For others, it's just the flexibility to work from anywhere, and so it's really important to understand people's what is actually motivating people, why, and this way, well, accordingly, trying to motivate every person the best way it can.
All right, perfect. Okay, moving on. Our next one is personal branding.
Personal branding, that's a fun one. That's one I'm working on a lot. So basically, personal branding today for me is really, 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 really important. It's still like for me the kind of hidden gem of skills that not many people are using yet, but a lot of people will very soon see that it's great to have. And I'm going to give two examples. A quick short one, which is mine, where basically I started talking about remote work. People started recognizing me as, I wouldn't say an expert, but like people reached out to me regarding remote work. Can you help me with finding a remote job? Can you share tips? Do you know where I can find a remote job? And so basically now, a few months later, I started really refocusing on remote work. That's about 1 month ago, and since then I have, well, two people who contact me to get on their podcast. So you are one of them, and then there's another one, and then I got a few people reaching out to me to work with me. There's a couple of companies who reached out to me to sponsor my newsletter. So just because of the personal brand that I set out there, I got a lot of contacts. And then I have another good story, and that's one of my friends in Mauritius, and his story is really inspiring. He basically worked in data, and he was like one of the first ones to start a course, an online course on, I don't remember the name, but a tool, a software that is very good in their domain. It was kind of niche, and so he started to create these courses. And then today, well, not today. Today he works for a US company um, as their customer education officer. I don't know what's the term exactly. Head of, I think it's head of customer education. And all of this happens because actually the company, someone of the company, came across his online course, bought it, did it, and like this guy had a lot of people already who bought his course, had really good reviews, and so he kind of became famous. Like his personal brand into this niche was really, well, he really was like a reference in the industry. And so the company absolutely wanted him, offered him a job. He got like a good pay raise. He got an international job in which he had a good role. He still could do his courses on the side because, well, his courses are still like paying him some nice extra side hustle, I would say. So and all of this happened just because he put himself out there. He kind of created his personal brand. Now on LinkedIn, he has tons of followers that really follow him because of his knowledge in data scientist of or engineering. I don't know exactly what it is, but so it's crazy how a good personal brand and putting yourself out there can really help you to find a new job, land new clients, and even if you want to change jobs, like I think companies are going to more and more look at what you're sharing, what you're knowing, and if they already see that you are very expert in a certain domain, well, you probably can already skip like the three first interviews that you would have with them because they know you have the some of the skills. So I think a personal brand is something you definitely should work on, and you can keep it very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, but just showing up a little bit. Just have a, for example, on LinkedIn, have a clean picture, have a clean headline, have a clear about section, and once in a while post something about your expertise. Somebody will be able to learn from it. So don't worry. There will always be someone better, but there will always be someone that knows less about it than you do. So it's totally worth the effort, and it will bring a lot in return after a while. So
Okay,
go for the personal
definitely.
branding.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, moving on. Productivity.
Productivity. That's interesting because I have actually been talking a bit about it on LinkedIn lately, especially in the remote work sector, um, because it's one of the main talking points, I would say, in the remote scope with all the forced return to offices. A lot of companies say, hey, we see a decrease in productivity of people who work remotely. So come back to the office and everything. But of course, as a remote advocate, I'm not okay with this because it has been proven that most of people they actually are more productive at home. Just because it's setting basically it's putting yourself somewhere. It doesn't have to be home. If it's in an office, it can perfectly be in an office for you. But it's like just being aware of anything that is around you that is happening. For example, if you have a colleague that you know that is a funny smartass making jokes every 5 minutes, and you will be like, they will make you lose your concentration every 5 minutes. Then you know that you won't be productive. And I think these are some of the moments that you really should focus on: is where or how can I have these deep work moments where I get 80% of my things done in 20% of the time. And the rest of the time, of course, there will be moments where you won't be productive, but it's something super interesting. And one of the best ways, actually, and it's kind of counter intuitive, but one of the best ways to be more productive is to setting smaller time blocks, because it's scientifically proven. I think it's called the Parkinson law. Um, that it's basically where you work. Well, if you put smaller time slots, or shorter, um, how do you call it, shorter,
Time frame.
yeah, not time frame, but the deadline, but that's the word I was looking for. So if you set a deadline that's closer to you, the work will get done. Like most humans procrastinate. So if you set your deadline a bit closer and your time frames are getting shorter, you will get the work done. And so that's really important in combination with taking breaks, because it has happened a lot to me that where I thought working, that's again the hard work versus smart work. So it's also related. Hard work, somebody who works 12 hours a day without taking any breaks will most in most of the cases will have done less than somebody who works 7 hours with regular breaks, because it's just, well, the human brain is just not made to be productive all day and to stay concentrated. It's just not possible. Maybe 0.001% can do this, but most people can't stay very focused for a long time. So it's really important to just take breaks, disconnect totally with what you're doing, um, go for a walk in nature, do some exercises. 5 minutes doesn't have to be more, but just disconnect for a moment to get back at it afterwards. And this is also hard work, smart work, productivity. Be smart and don't overwork because your productivity will plunge. Just like work hard in the moments that you're actually working. Get focused. Don't get distracted by everything that's going around. Um, and so this is something that is really important to focus on today, because I believe that in the future there will be less and less companies who focus on the hours you work, but rather on the output that you're able to deliver. And honestly, if I can one day work 4 hours a day because my output is better in 4 hours a day than being present uh, for 8 hours a day in the office, well, I mean, it's not a hard choice. I know which one I'm choosing. So I think working on your productivity is super important nowadays.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to relationship building and networking.
Um, that's again a fun one because yeah, well, the whole LinkedIn, well, which is my industry and what I'm passionate about. It's really important. Uh, Again, in life and well, professional and private life, because in the end, I really believe that the people you connect with, you build relationships with, you network with, um, those are actually the people who will professionally will get you somewhere. I mean, I've heard a lot of people who created very strong networks on LinkedIn, for example, and got a job out of there because of the network. Crazy story was even yesterday. Yesterday, I had a call with someone who is going to feature in one of my future newsletters, and it was crazy. So she connected with someone. She wanted to move to Sevilla in Spain, and her job wouldn't let her work remotely. So she started looking for a new job, and it was pretty hard. She didn't really know where to start looking, etc. And then one day, someone sent her a message on her birthday, a happy birthday, and it appeared to be a HR director in a Sevilla-based company. And so she was like, "Okay, this is a sign. Let's go for it." I'm starting to chat with her, and well, I guess you can guess the end. She got a job in this company, so everything turned out well. But it's crazy because it happened because she had this person in her network, in her LinkedIn network. This person chose to send her a happy birthday. So maybe it was because this person had been following her, or because they had a talk before. I don't know what's the story behind it, but I know that it got her a job because of being connected on LinkedIn. So sometimes it can really give like a lot of opportunities to connect with people, have a genuine chat with them, be interested in what others do, and who knows what will happen from it. Um, this is it can be in your love life, it can be in your professional life, it can be your relationship with your friends, with your family, but a lot of things can happen thanks to networking and and relationship building. So I'm a big fan of it.
Okay, great. The next one is your area of expertise, remote work.
Yes, I have been talking a lot about it already. I guess like I related most of the stuff to remote work, but yeah, for me, remote work is not really a soft skill in itself. It's more like a it's something it's an opportunity basically that you get. I don't want to say perk because I don't consider it a perk. I consider it like smart employers. They give the possibility, they give the flexibility to work remotely, um, and actually all of the soft skills that we discussed already are super helpful to be a successful remote worker, to be productive, to be able to have a certain career growth, to be able to manage people remotely or be managed remotely, to coach others, to start your freelancing career, to find clients. I mean, all of the soft skills we discussed, when you put all of them together and you're good at most of them, because you can't always be good at everything, but when you manage and you're good at most of them, that's the moment where like remote work starts to become really fun, because remote work can be hard if you're not knowing what you're doing, if you're easily distracted, if you're easily feeling lonely, or if you're more of an introvert. Sometimes it can be harder than for extroverts who are going to organize virtual coffees with colleagues or something like that. So I think all of these skills that we talked about are super important to make remote work work.
Okay. All right. Moving on to self motivation.
Yes, self motivation. So that's again a super important one, especially in remote work, um, because well, in remote work you're often alone, so you're the only one who can motivate yourself. It's you and yourself. Sometimes you're working with friends or in a co-working, but still it's like you against yourself. And this is something that I think is one of the reasons why a lot of companies think productivity is better when working in office, because they think that when there's a manager shouting at you or watching you that you're going to work better. But the fact is that I don't believe this. I think I have been in one of my first companies where I worked. There was this person, and from 4 p.m. when like the job was more or less done, she just did nothing anymore, and she waited until 6, until like it was more or less the time to go home, and she didn't do anything anymore from 4 to 6. And this is kind of a loss of time, because if you're not doing anything, it means you're not motivated, especially if you're staying. So at that moment, I think it's better to somehow work in a job that really gets you motivated. That's first very important thing. A lot of people want to work remotely because they get the opportunity to be flexible. But if you don't love what you're doing, and if it's not something that can motivate you, then it will be almost impossible to self motivate yourself. You will be procrastinating. You'll be finding excuses for yourself. You'll probably not have the best results that your company is expecting from you. So I think the most important one for self motivation is to ask yourself the right questions before starting anything in life. I mean, I played hockey and football for many years, and there's a lot of people who um, who joins our team in the beginning of the year, and then finally in the end of the year we saw like they ended up showing up maybe 5 times out of 20, and it was just because of a lack of motivation. They probably weren't they probably didn't join the group for those good reasons. Maybe they hated playing sports, but they loved being with their friends, and so they found excuses because it was not something they wanted to do 100%. So it can be like in your hobbies, but it can also be to in your professional life. So just don't lie to yourself and ask yourself the good questions, and yeah, be honest with yourself. And I think this is like the best tip you can get for self-motivation, and things will get so much easier if it's something you're passionate about and that's easy for you to show up to every day.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to time management.
Time management. Yeah, that goes again with productivity, self motivation as well, because For me, the most important thing in time management is, first of all, you have to know when you are productive, when you're not, or when you're good at something, where you're not. Again, it can be in a hobby. For example, if you want to start running, training for a, I don't know, 10 miles or something. If you know that you're not a morning person, don't go run in the morning. Go run in the evening or in the afternoon. If you're a morning person, go run in the morning, because that's where you're gonna get done. Because in the evening you probably don't won't do it anyway. Same goes with work. For me, I work better in the morning. Like I can be a pretty early bird, but then in the evening, most of the time, like I would say 90% of the time, after 6, 7 o'clock, I don't get anything done anymore. And on the other hand, there's some of my friends, they're like really night owls. They don't get anything done during the day, but then in the evening, they're like Speedy Gonzalez. They're going super fast. They're super good at what they're doing. So yeah, I think the most important is to be self-aware, to understand yourself, when you're good at something, when not, when is the right moment, and then at that moment you just structure your day and you put time blocks in it. And again, like I said, for productivity, if you set yourself time blocks and you kind of are disciplined and say, okay, at the end of the day, I want all of this done, and at the end of this time block, I want this to be done, there's a 99% chance you'll get it done, because it's just in your head, you want to do it. And well, we humans, we hate to fail. If we put something in our head, we want to get it done. So yeah, time management for me, like time blocking my days based on my productivity, and what I'm good at what time of the day. That's like the best trick I would be able to give. And this is something that in my past jobs, in two of the three companies I worked for, like the companies also said, like, okay, this is one of the best tricks that you can have to be productive, is to really kind of have your day structured. But again, it's not for everyone. There's some people who love chaos. They love to work whenever they feel like working. So this is more for me. But I think for most people, having some kind of structure is still something good to have.
Okay. All right. Moving on to vulnerability in the workplace.
Um, yeah, that's something actually really good, because it's something that I don't remember the exact numbers, but the overworking part is something that a lot of workers, and especially remote workers, are facing. And if you're not being able to show some vulnerability, um, it gets even harder, because showing you're vulnerable also means like being able to talk about it, to say to your boss or to your client, hey, this is, we're reaching a limit. I can't do more. It's not going to be possible for me, mentally, physically. Depends on your job. And it's just being honest. It's not only about being vulnerable, it's also about being honest to yourself, and showing the real you. I mean, there's so many, like way too many burnouts and things going on, layoffs, people being sad because they're, well, I mean, in Europe it's a bit different, but I know in the US, like social security is not the greatest of all time. And so when you get without a job, like you better find a new job really fast, because otherwise you're just losing a lot of money and there's no other income. um, and so just showing the vulnerability, being honest about it, can be, for example, even on LinkedIn, hey, have a word, I got laid off, I really need it because I have a family that I have to feed. And you can be sure that just by posting this, showing some vulnerability, you will get thousands of people sharing your stuff. hundreds of people reacting to it, tagging HR directors and companies they know. And if you just say nothing and you just put the open to work, you're just one of the millions putting the open to work, and nobody's going to say, okay, he's really vulnerable. So I think showing vulnerability is something that can really help, and it's not something you should be ashamed about, not as a woman and not as a male. um, I want to focus even a bit more on males, because a lot of males think that being vulnerable is like not very masculine, but sometimes it can be, and it's perfectly
Mhm.
okay to just be vulnerable. People will appreciate the honesty and the vulnerability, and that's what's gonna set yourself apart from most of the other people. So it's definitely a very interesting topic, and I think it's definitely something really good, as long as, of course, you're not complaining all the time to your boss for everything. But just like be smart about it, and know when it's the right timing to show some vulnerability and when it's not.
Okay. And this brings us to our last one, work life balance.
Work-life balance. All right. It feels like I already have like said all the elements in the past questions, but yeah, work-life balance is something that, if I were a employer today, it's something that I would kind of interview the candidates, because the people who can balance their work and their life, those are the people who are most successful. It's a bit what I said in the beginning, and at some other moments in the call, the fact that taking breaks makes you more productive. The fact to work when you're most productive, or when you can work, for if you have children, it's going to be harder to work between 5 and 7, because it's the moments you give them their bath, you feed them. But just having this balance uh, shows that you know when you're good at something and at what moments you can get the work done. And so this is something, as an employer, I would really interview my candidates about. And on the other hand, also something, as a candidate, I would ask the employer. So, for example, if I was to to candidate for a specific job nowadays, one of my first questions, without hesitation, would be like, are there fixed hours, or can I work flexibly? Like if I need to go to the hairdresser, if I want to go do some grocery shopping outside of rush hour, if I don't know, like small things, just to win a lot of time and to be less frustrated during my uh, non-work life. um, it's gonna really push me to be better in my work life. And so this is something that's really important on both ways to match. And this is something that, for me, it's not only about remote, but the whole future of work. That it's all about this work-life balance. And it's something that I like. A lot of people say work-life balance shouldn't be called work-life balance, because work is part of life. So it's not even work versus life, because work is part of life. So it's just like, how do you balance your life and everything that's in it? And you spend maybe 8 hours a day working, but then you still have 16 hours a day. So are you sleeping 16 hours, 8 hours? Are you having your 8 hours of sleep? What are you doing in those other 8 hours that you're not working, not sleeping? And this is all part of the balance. And this is something like, are you working out? Are you moving? Or are you just sitting in your couch doing nothing? What do you enjoy doing? What gets you motivated? Again, it's all related to self motivation, when to work. So this whole work life balance, for me, is just a life balance, and where do you put work into your life? So I think that's a note I will finish on.
Okay, okay. All right. So we're gonna move on to the last part simply. Alex, what advice, after you gave us a lot of advice, and you have a great level in English, you shared with us your experience your journey, what advice would you give someone for improving their English, even in a professional context, exploring these soft skills in English, or something else that anything that comes to mind, just that we could provide for the Fluent Reads community?
Um, I think there's a few ones. The first one is 100% to read in English. It doesn't have to be books. I'm not a very huge book person um, because I read very slowly, and it gets me mad when I see that I'm not going fast enough. But read content. It can be on LinkedIn, it can be articles, it can be books if you like books, it can be cartoons even. It can be, I don't know, if you like TV shows, watch it in English and with English subtitles, um, to really see visually the words and everything. So this would be my biggest one, and then the second one is, and that's where most people are a bit afraid, but it's just speak it with strangers, like connect with people, um, connect with English speaking people or people who really have a really high level in English, because by chatting with them, it can be written or verbal, like have virtual coffees with them. You'll learn a lot of vocabulary. You listen to how people speak in real life, how they, what words they use, written in written communication. So I think those are the two biggest one that I can give.
Yes.
And then like some one that like a tip that I sometimes use now with the whole AI and everything that's going on is in my newsletter when I feel like, okay, this is not the best level ever. I don't know how to say it. I just like write it down the way I think it is, and then I say, okay, I'm not a native English speaker. This is what I wrote. Can you now rewrite it in the way a native speaker would write it? And then you get like a very nice piece of text. And by rereading it, like your version and the new version, you already learn a lot. And at least, well, in my newsletter, it will come over a little bit more professional. And in the meantime, I'm learning a lot of new words and how to use these words or these verbal phrasal verbs and everything. So I think these three tips are a good start to your way to a good English.
Okay, okay, great. So lastly, before we finish up, if there, it's optional, if you have any, this interview has been focused on you primarily. If you have any questions for me regarding the topic or anything English in your opinion, well, sorry, whatever comes to mind. If not, we'll just wrap up.
Yeah, maybe actually one small question is
Okay.
the reason behind this podcast, like because you're obviously native English speaker, so I don't know. I have to admit I didn't check all of your background, so I just wanted to know what motivated you to launch this and to start this podcast.
Okay. So basically, I've worked for over 10 years as an applied linguist. So I've always been interested in second language acquisition. And different things related to that. Not just
Mm-hmm.
essentially providing resources for professionals or academics, but kind of find out what are the underlining reasons for them wanting to learn. So incentives are extremely important when people want to. Most of the people who want to improve their English, it's usually for a professional purpose. And I found that through personal and professional development and also nonfiction books, this seemed to be something that there were a community of many people that actually were interested in this content, but it was very difficult to find a community within this topic where they could have this exposure to these topics, but also have that facilitation and help them optimizing their language proficiency as well. So that was one of the prime reasons. After working with hundreds of different profiles, I thought about one day how it would be nice to kind of like bring them together where they could actually dissect these topics more and just to simply, just create synergies and where people can essentially learn from each other and make it. I think it's more important to make it learner centric. I think sometimes when you're not a native English speaker, it can be quite intimidating because simply in many cases sometimes their studies been
Hmm.
done in meetings or everything, the natives kind of take charge. Sometimes they're not even aware of their language usage and how that impacts other native speakers. So essentially, creating a dynamic and ecosystem, starting with this. With these interviews, with this podcast, essentially to facilitate confidence, maybe inspire, and just create positive vibes in a professional and personal context. Is essentially, we all need help from each other, and I think it's important to be able to provide unique perspectives. Besides that, we already have big institutions, Harvard Business Review, or we have great authors who write books, but also we need those insights and individual opinions from people, everyday people who are working in different positions. So those are several motivations that essentially brought me to this interview that we're having today and generating the Fluent Reads community.
No, that's super cool, and it's true that yeah, I've never come across any similar community and podcast. Maybe because I'm not 100% focused on it, but I really like what you're doing. Actually, it's really smart because
Okay.
there's so many. Well, again, in remote work, there's so much. Well, most of it happens in English, especially in distributed
Yes.
teams, and so a lot of people are not native English speakers. So it's a really important topic that was actually on my list as well to tackle in one of my future remote destination remote newsletters to talk about the fact how to well some tips to feel more confident as a non-native
Uh-huh.
English speaker in a English speaking distributed team. So love it.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Alex, for the great insights that you gave us for these different soft skills related to the Fluent Reads Growth Series. Thank you again, and have a great day.